Everyone feared the arrogant billionaire, until a black woman did the unthinkable. He built an empire on power, fear, and silence. To the world, Marcus Huntington was untouchable. The ruthless billionaire who destroyed neighborhoods and crushed anyone who stood in his way. But when he met Naomi Clarke, a fearless black woman who fought not for profit, but for people, everything he thought he knew about power began to fall apart. What started as a battle between a billionaire and a community leader soon became something far deeper. A war between conscience and greed. Between a heart that forgot how to feel, and a woman who reminded him what it meant to be human. This is Everyone feared the arrogant billionaire, until a black woman did the unthinkable. And it all began the day she looked him in the eye and said, "You're not heartless, Marcus. You're just lonely." Before we begin, please kindly subscribe to this channel, like, comment, and share. I'll be glad if this story reaches as far as the United States, Australia, and even the United Kingdom. Hello my wonderful family. Welcome back to Sammy Stories. May the Almighty bless your hearts with peace that never fades, and may your days be wrapped in divine favor and joy. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Huntington Tower, each drop seeming to bow before the man who stood behind them. Marcus Huntington III didn't just own the tallest building in Manhattan. He owned the fear that lived in the hearts of everyone who worked beneath its shadow. At 42 years old, Marcus had built an empire that made grown men weep and powerful women question their worth. His tech conglomerate, Huntington Global Industries, had swallowed 17 companies in the past 5 years alone. But it wasn't just his business acumen that made him feared. It was the cold, calculated cruelty with which he dismantled anyone who dared to stand in his way. "Sir," the Peterson account, his assistant stammered, barely able to meet his gaze through the reflection in the window. "They're asking for an extension on." "No." Marcus didn't turn around. His voice was ice over steel. "Foreclose. Today." "But sir, that's a family business. 3 generations. They have children who—" "I don't pay you to have a conscience, Jennifer. I pay you to execute my orders." He finally turned, and Jennifer felt her breath catch. His eyes were a piercing gray, beautiful and terrifying all at once. "Or should I find someone who will?" Jennifer's hand trembled as she clutched her tablet. "No, sir. I'll handle it immediately." As she scurried away, Marcus returned his gaze to the city below. From this height, people looked like ants. Insignificant. Crushable. That's exactly what they were to him. His phone buzzed. Another board member backing down from a challenge. Another competitor withdrawing from a bid. Another victory in a life filled with nothing but victories. But victory, Marcus had learned long ago, tasted like ash when there was no one left to celebrate with. Not that he'd ever admit that to anyone. Vulnerability was for the weak. Emotion was a liability. And Marcus Huntington III had no weaknesses, no liabilities, and certainly no emotions. Or so he thought. Naomi Clarke had learned 3 things growing up in the south side of Chicago. Never let anyone see you sweat, always keep your head up, and fight for every inch of ground you earned because nobody was going to hand you anything. At 34, she'd fought her way from a cramped 2-bedroom apartment she'd shared with her mother and 3 siblings to become one of the most respected community organizers in New York City. Her non-profit, Rising Voices, had saved 12 community centers from closure, stopped 4 predatory development projects, and helped over 3,000 families stay in their homes. But none of that prepared her for Marcus Huntington. "Ms. Clarke, thank you for coming." The lawyer across the mahogany table didn't look thankful. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "I'm afraid I have some difficult news." Naomi sat straight, her hands folded calmly in her lap despite the anxiety clawing at her chest. "The Riverside Community Center." "Yes. Mr. Huntington has acquired the property. The entire block, actually. He's planning a luxury residential development. You have 60 days to vacate." 60 days. The Riverside Center had been the heartbeat of the neighborhood for 40 years. It's where Naomi had learned to read when her mother worked double shifts. Where hundreds of kids got their only hot meal of the day. Where teenagers stayed off the streets and elderly residents found community. That center serves over 500 people every week, Naomi said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. Many of them have nowhere else to go. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Huntington has offered a relocation package. How much? $50,000 to cover moving costs and... Naomi laughed, but there was no humor in it. $50,000? The programs we run are valued at over $2 million annually. The community impact is priceless. Ms. Clarke, I understand your frustration, but Mr. Huntington's purchase was completely legal. The previous owner was facing bankruptcy, and Marcus Huntington swooped in like a vulture to pick the bones. Naomi stood, her 5'6" frame somehow filling the room. I'd like to speak with Mr. Huntington directly. The lawyer actually paled. That's not possible. Mr. Huntington doesn't take meetings with. With who? Naomi's eyes flashed. Community advocates? Black women. People who don't have billions in the bank. Ms. Clarke, please understand. No, you understand. Naomi leaned across the table, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. You tell Marcus Huntington that Naomi Clarke will be at his office tomorrow at 9 a.m. And if he's too much of a coward to face the people whose lives he's destroying, then the whole world will know it. She walked out before the lawyer could respond, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown clock. Marcus Huntington had no idea what was coming for him. Marcus was reviewing acquisition reports when Jennifer knocked on his door the next morning, looking more nervous than usual. Sir, there's someone here to see you. I don't have any appointments scheduled. He didn't look up from his tablet. No, sir, but she's insisting. Then have security remove her. We tried, sir. She's in the lobby with what appears to be local news cameras and about 50 people with signs. That got Marcus's attention. He looked up, his jaw tightening. What? She says her name is Naomi Clarke, and she's not leaving until you meet with her. Sir, CNN is down there. Marcus stood, straightening his $15,000 suit. No one made demands of him. No one disrupted his business. And certainly no one brought media attention to his building without permission. Tell her she has 5 minutes. When Naomi Clarke walked into his office, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, surprise. She wasn't what he expected. Most people who entered his domain were already defeated, their shoulders hunched, their voices small. But this woman walked in like she owned the place. She was beautiful in a way that annoyed him. Natural hair pulled back in a way that was professional but unapologetic. A navy dress that was modest but perfectly tailored. Brown eyes that didn't just meet his gaze, they challenged it. Mr. Huntington. She didn't extend her hand. Neither did he. Ms. Clarke. You have 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. I'll need less. She pulled out a folder, placing it on his desk. The Riverside Community Center serves 547 people weekly. 62% are children under 16. 38% are seniors over 65. Last year alone, we prevented 14 kids from entering the juvenile justice system, helped 80 families avoid eviction, and provided over 10,000 meals. Marcus glanced at the folder but didn't touch it. Impressive statistics. However, they don't change the fact that I own the property. Those aren't just statistics. Those are lives. Real people with names, families, dreams. Ms. Clarke, I'm a businessman, not a social worker. The property was purchased legally. I'm offering fair compensation for relocation. This meeting is over. So that's it. Naomi's voice rose slightly. You're going to displace an entire community for what? Another luxury building that'll sit half empty while families sleep in shelters. What I do with my property is none of your concern. It's my concern when your property used to be our community. Nothing is ours, Ms. Clarke. Everything has a price. The previous owner chose to sell. That's capitalism. No, that's cruelty. Naomi stepped closer to his desk. You forced that sale. You knew the owner was struggling, and you manipulated the situation until he had no choice but to sell to you at a fraction of what it was worth. Marcus's eyes narrowed. She'd done her homework. Business is business. And people are people. Or have you forgotten that in your glass tower? Something flickered across Marcus's face, too quick to identify, but Naomi caught it. For just a second, the mask slipped. Your time is up, Ms. Clarke. He pressed the intercom. Jennifer, escort our guest out. I'm not going anywhere until you agree to let the center stay. Then you'll be removed by security. In front of CNN? Go ahead. Naomi crossed her arms. I'd love to see the headlines. Billionaire has community advocate arrested for defending children and seniors. Marcus stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. He walked around the desk until he was directly in front of her. Most people instinctively stepped back when he did this. The intimidation was physical, intentional. Naomi didn't budge. You're playing a game you can't win, he said quietly. I'm not playing a game. I'm fighting for people's lives. Semantics. Morality. They stood there, locked in a battle of wills that seemed to make the air between them crackle. Marcus found himself noticing things he had no business noticing. The way her jaw set when she was angry, the steadiness of her breathing, the faint scent of cocoa butter and determination. I'll give you 30 days instead of 60, he said finally. That's my final offer. I want 6 months and a guarantee that you'll help us find equivalent space in the neighborhood. Marcus actually laughed, a sound so rare in these walls that Jennifer, who'd been hovering by the door, nearly dropped her tablet. You have some nerve, Ms. Clarke. I have some backbone, Mr. Huntington. You should try growing one. The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. No one, absolutely no one, spoke to Marcus Huntington that way. He should have her thrown out. He should ruin her. He should make her regret ever walking into his building. Instead, he heard himself say, 60 days. But I'll meet with you once a week to discuss transition plans. If you can present a viable alternative that doesn't interfere with my development timeline, I'll consider it. Naomi's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected that. I want that in writing. Jennifer. His assistant practically fell over herself getting a tablet ready. Within minutes, a contract was drafted and signed. As Naomi turned to leave, Marcus called out, Ms. Clarke. She paused at the door. Don't mistake this for kindness. I always win. Always. Naomi looked back at him, and for the first time since she'd entered, she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Then you've never fought someone with nothing to lose, Mr. Huntington. After she left, Marcus stood at his window, staring out at the city but not really seeing it. His hand was shaking slightly. From anger, he told himself. Definitely anger. Jennifer cleared her throat. Sir, your 10 o'clock is waiting. Cancel it. Sir. Cancel all my meetings for the day. As Jennifer scurried out, Marcus pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He called his therapist. Dr. Morrison. It's Marcus. I need an appointment. Marcus. It's been years. Is everything all right? He thought about Naomi Clarke's unflinching gaze, the way she'd stood her ground, the strange feeling that had settled in his chest since she'd walked out. No, he said quietly. I don't think it is. Naomi sat in her tiny office at Rising Voices headquarters, a converted storefront in Queens that leaked when it rained and had heating that worked on its own schedule. Her team of 5 other organizers and 12 volunteers was celebrating her victory against Marcus Huntington. 6 weeks to present an alternative plan. her best friend and co-founder, Lisa Washington, said, raising a can of off-brand soda in mock toast. That's 6 weeks more than anyone else has ever gotten from that man. But Naomi wasn't celebrating. She was thinking. It's not enough time, she said, scrolling through her laptop. And he knows it. So what's our play? Naomi looked up at her team, dedicated people who worked for next to nothing because they believed in the mission. They'd faced landlords, corrupt politicians, and corporate giants before. But Marcus Huntington was different. We need to understand who we are fighting. Lisa, I need everything you can find on Marcus Huntington. Not just the business stuff. I need to know who he is. Where he came from. What makes him tick. Over the next week, Naomi became obsessed. She read every article, every profile, every mention of Marcus Huntington she could find. What she discovered was a man who seemed to have no past before the age of 25. He'd appeared seemingly out of nowhere with a tech patent that revolutionized data encryption. Within 5 years, he'd built a billion-dollar company. Within 10, he was one of the richest men in America. But his childhood, his family, his early years, all of it was a carefully constructed wall of silence. It's like he was born fully formed at 25, Lisa said, spreading documents across the conference table. No yearbook photos. No childhood friends giving interviews. No proud parents in attendance at his early successes. Everyone comes from somewhere, Naomi murmured, studying a rare photograph of young Marcus at a tech conference. He looked different then, softer somehow, before the armor had fully formed. Wait, Lisa pulled up an old newspaper article. Look at this. Local boy makes good. Marcus Huntington receives full scholarship to MIT. It's from the Greenville Gazette, South Carolina. But it's from 30 years ago, and there's barely anything online. Then we go to South Carolina, Naomi said. We don't have budget for. I'll pay for it myself. Lisa looked at her friend carefully. Naomi, this is becoming more than just about the center, isn't it? What do you mean? I mean you've been up until 3 a.m. every night researching this man. You barely ate at the strategy meeting. And you get this look on your face every time someone mentions his name. What look? Like you're trying to solve a puzzle that's also somehow personal. Naomi closed her laptop. He's our opponent. Of course it's personal. But as she lay in bed that night in her studio apartment in Brooklyn, Naomi had to admit, if only to herself, that Lisa was right. There was something about Marcus Huntington that had gotten under her skin. The way he'd looked at her in that office. The unexpected agreement to meet weekly. The brief flash of something human in those cold grey eyes. She'd faced down plenty of powerful men before. Why was this one different? Her phone buzzed. An email from an unknown sender. She almost deleted it, then saw the subject line, M. Huntington Inquiry. Her heart rate picked up as she opened it. Ms. Clarke, I saw your name associated with rising voices in a news article about Marcus Huntington's latest acquisition. My name is Sarah Chen. I used to work for HGI. If you want to know the truth about Marcus Huntington, meet me at Cafe Reggio in Greenwich Village tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. He has eyes everywhere. Naomi read the email 3 times, her mind racing. This could be a trap. It could be Marcus testing her. It could be nothing. But it could also be exactly what she needed. She typed a response, I'll be there. Cafe Reggio was a dimly lit coffee shop that smelled of espresso and old books. Naomi arrived early, choosing a corner table where she could watch the door. She'd told Lisa where she was going, just in case. Sarah Chen arrived exactly at 2. She was in her late 40s, with streaks of grey in her black hair and the look of someone who hadn't slept well in a long time. She ordered a coffee and sat across from Naomi, her hands wrapped around the cup like she needed its warmth. Thank you for coming, Sarah said. I wasn't sure you would. You said you knew the truth about Marcus Huntington. Sarah laughed bitterly. I know a truth about him. Whether it's the whole truth, I couldn't say. I worked as his executive assistant for 7 years. I saw things. New things. And when I couldn't live with those things anymore, I left. What kind of things? Sarah glanced around the cafe nervously. Marcus Huntington wasn't born rich, Ms. Clarke. He clawed his way up from nothing. And I mean nothing. But what most people don't know is what he had to do to get there. Who he had to become. Naomi leaned forward. Tell me. Marcus grew up in foster care in South Carolina. His mother died when he was 8, overdose. Father was never in the picture. He bounced between homes, most of them abusive. By the time he was 16, he was living in his car, working 3 jobs to finish high school. Naomi felt something shift in her chest. This didn't match the image of the cold billionaire in his glass tower. He got into MIT on a full scholarship, Sarah continued. Genius-level IQ. But he had no money, no support system. He nearly dropped out in his first year because he couldn't afford food. That's when he met Richard Callaway. The tech investor. Yes. Richard took Marcus under his wing. Mentored him, funded his research, treated him like a son. Marcus worshipped him. For the first time in his life, he had someone who believed in him. Sarah's hands tightened around her cup. What happened? Naomi asked softly. Marcus developed the encryption technology that would become his fortune. He and Richard were supposed to be partners, 50-50 split. They shook hands on it. Marcus trusted him completely. Sarah's voice hardened. The week before they were supposed to file the patent, Richard had his lawyers draw up papers showing that Marcus was just an employee, not a partner. Richard claimed the technology as his own intellectual property. That's theft. But it was legal theft. Marcus was young, inexperienced. He didn't have the money for lawyers. Richard took everything. And he did it with a smile, telling Marcus he should be grateful for the experience. Naomi sat back, processing this. So what did Marcus do? He spent the next 3 years working 18-hour days, living on ramen, rebuilding from scratch. He developed an even better version of the technology, made sure every I was dotted and every T was crossed on the patent. And then... Sarah's smile was grim. Then he destroyed Richard Callaway. How? Systematically. Methodically. Marcus bought up Richard's debts, called in his loans, poached his clients, exposed his accounting irregularities. Within 2 years, Richard lost everything. His company, his reputation, his fortune. Last I heard, he was living in a retirement home in Florida. His kids won't talk to him, and he survives on Social Security. Naomi felt cold. Marcus did all that. Marcus learned that trust is weakness. That kindness is a liability. That the only way to protect yourself is to become so powerful that no one can ever hurt you again. Sarah met Naomi's eyes. The man you're fighting isn't cruel for cruelty's sake, Ms. Clarke. He's cruel because he believes it's the only way to survive. That doesn't excuse. I'm not making excuses. I'm giving you information. You wanted to know who Marcus Huntington is? He's a scared boy who decided never to be vulnerable again. And he's very, very good at keeping that wall up. Why are you telling me this? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Because in my 7 years working for him, I saw him slowly losing his humanity. It was like watching someone drown in slow motion. And I think... She paused. I think if anyone can remind him he's still human, it might be someone who's fighting him. I don't want to save him, Sarah. I want to save my community center. Maybe you can do both. Sarah stood to leave. One more thing. Marcus has a meeting scheduled with you next Monday at 9 a.m. He's going to offer you a deal. He'll fund a new center in a different neighborhood, fully equipped, better than what you have now. All you have to do is give up Riverside. How do you know that? Because it's what he always does. He'll offer you something that seems generous, that might even be objectively better. But it'll come with strings attached. And it'll require you to compromise your principles, even if just a little bit. I won't take it. I know. That's why I'm telling you. Sarah buttoned her coat. Good luck, Ms. Clarke. And be careful. Marcus Huntington has spent 20 years building walls around his heart. When someone threatens those walls, he doesn't know how to respond except to attack. After Sarah left, Naomi sat in the cafe for another hour, her coffee growing cold. She thought about a boy living in his car, working 3 jobs, trusting someone who betrayed him. She thought about the man who'd emerged from that betrayal, brilliant, powerful, and utterly alone. And she thought about the way he'd looked at her in his office, like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. She pulled out her phone and did something impulsive. She searched for Greenville, South Carolina Youth Services and started making calls. If Marcus Huntington's past held the key to reaching him, then Naomi was going to find it. Even if it meant confronting truths about poverty, trauma, and survival that hit uncomfortably close to her own story. Monday morning arrived with autumn rain that turned the city gray and cold. Naomi dressed carefully, a burgundy blazer over a black dress, her natural hair styled in a professional bun. She wanted to look like she belonged in Marcus Huntington's world, even though they both knew she didn't. His office was even more intimidating the second time. Maybe because now she knew his secret. Now she could see past the intimidating facade to the scared boy underneath. Or maybe she was projecting, seeing what she wanted to see. Ms. Clarke. Marcus stood when she entered, a gesture of courtesy that seemed almost automatic. Coffee? No, thank you. Straight to business, then. I like that. He sat, steepling his fingers. I've had my team put together a proposal. Here it comes, Naomi thought, remembering Sarah's warning. Marcus slid a leather folder across his desk. There's a property in Brooklyn. Actually, 3 properties. I own them. They're currently vacant but structurally sound. Total square footage is twice what you have at Riverside. I'm prepared to deed them to your organization outright, plus provide an endowment of $5 million for renovations and first-year operating costs. Naomi opened the folder, scanning the documents. It was generous. Unbelievably generous. Everything Sarah had predicted. What's the catch? No catch. You get a better facility. The community gets better services. Everyone wins. Everyone except the people who've made Riverside their home for 40 years. Change is inevitable, Ms. Clarke. I'm offering you a chance to be part of that change in a positive way. Naomi closed the folder. You're offering me a bribe. Marcus's jaw tightened. I'm offering you an opportunity. Same thing, different words. She pushed the folder back toward him. No. You haven't even looked at the properties. I don't need to. The people we serve don't need new buildings in Brooklyn. They need the community center that's been in their neighborhood for 4 decades. They need stability. They need home. Home. Marcus said the word like it tasted strange on his tongue. That building is crumbling. The roof leaks. The heating barely works. You call that home? Yes. Because home isn't about perfect buildings, Mr. Huntington. It's about the memories made there. The connections formed. The safety found in familiar walls. Something flickered across Marcus's face again. That same brief crack in the armor. You grew up poor, he said suddenly. Naomi blinked at the subject change. Excuse me. It's not a question. I can tell. The way you talk about community, about belonging, that only comes from people who've had to fight for those things. Is there a point to this? Just an observation. Marcus leaned back. Most people who come to me wanting things have agendas. They want money, status, connections. But you genuinely care about these people. Of course I care about them. They're not business opportunities. They're human beings. Everyone's a business opportunity if you look at them right. Is that how you see the world? As one giant transaction? It's how the world is, Ms. Clarke. I just have the honesty to admit it. Naomi stood, anger flashing in her eyes. You know what I think? I think you tell yourself that so you don't have to feel anything. It's easier to see people as transactions than to acknowledge that you're lonely. The room went deathly quiet. Marcus's expression turned to stone. This meeting is over. No, it isn't. We have a contract. 1 hour, once a week. We've only been talking for 15 minutes. Fine. Marcus's voice was ice. Then sit down and let's talk business. Clearly, emotional appeals don't work on me. Clearly. Naomi sat back down, her heart pounding. She'd crossed a line. But part of her was glad she had. They spent the next 45 minutes in tense negotiation. Marcus presented economic data showing why his development made sense. Naomi countered with community impact studies showing what would be lost. Neither budged an inch. When the hour finally ended, Naomi gathered her things. At the door, she paused. Mr. Huntington. What? He didn't look up from his tablet. That boy who lived in his car, working 3 jobs to stay in school, what would he think of the man you've become? Marcus's hand stilled on his tablet. For a long moment, he didn't move. When he finally looked up, his eyes were harder than ever. That boy died a long time ago, Ms. Clarke. And good riddance. He was weak. No, Naomi said softly. He was brave. Surviving what you survived, that takes tremendous courage. She left before he could respond. Marcus sat alone in his office for a long time after she left. Finally, he pulled up the security footage from the meeting, watching it again. Watching her face as she talked about home, community, connection. Things he'd convinced himself didn't matter. His phone rang. The developer he was partnering with on the Riverside project. Marcus. Just checking in. Are we still on track for demolition in 60 days? Marcus looked at the frozen image of Naomi on his screen, her eyes blazing with conviction as she argued for people he'd never met. I'll call you back, he said, and hung up. Then he did something he couldn't remember ever doing before. He cancelled his afternoon meetings, grabbed his coat, and walked out of his building with no destination in mind. He ended up in Riverside, standing across the street from the community center. It was a modest building, nothing special architecturally. The sign was faded. The brickwork needed repointing. But as he watched, he saw people streaming in and out. An elderly woman being helped up the steps by a teenage boy. Children laughing as they ran to an after-school program. A group of men his age heading to what looked like a job training class. He watched for over an hour, invisible in his expensive coat among the working-class neighborhood. And for the first time in 20 years, Marcus Huntington felt something other than the satisfaction of winning. He felt ashamed. The second Monday meeting was different. Naomi could sense it the moment she walked into Marcus's office. He was standing at his window, hands in his pockets, and he didn't turn around immediately when she entered. Mr. Huntington. I went to Riverside. His voice was quiet, almost reflective. Last week. I watched the center for an hour. Naomi's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. And what did you see? Life. He finally turned to face her. He looked tired, she realized. Like he hadn't been sleeping well. I saw what you've been trying to tell me. Community. Connection. Things I... He paused. Things I'd forgotten were real. Naomi set her bag down slowly, not sure what was happening but knowing it was important. Does this mean? No. He held up a hand. I'm still moving forward with the development. But... He gestured to 2 chairs by a small table, not his imposing desk. Sit. Please. They sat facing each other, closer than they'd been before. Naomi could see the fine lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair. He looked human in a way he hadn't before. "I want to propose something different," Marcus said. "What if we incorporated the community center into the development?" "What do you mean?" He pulled out architectural plans. The first 3 floors would be dedicated community space. State-of-the-art facilities, fully funded by the building's commercial tenants on the upper floors. You'd have more room than you've ever had, better equipment, and sustainable funding. Naomi studied the plans. It was brilliant, actually. And it would work. What's the catch? The catch is that it would take 18 months to build. The current center would have to close during construction. 18 months is a long time for the community to go without services. I know. That's why I'm prepared to fund temporary space and all operational costs during the transition. You'd have the resources to serve the community even better while we build. Naomi looked up at him, searching his face for the trick, the manipulation. But all she saw was a man genuinely trying to find a solution. Why the change? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Let's just say someone reminded me that I used to be human. You still are human, Mr. Huntington. Marcus. The word came out almost reluctantly. If we're going to work together on this, you should call me Marcus. Then you should call me Naomi. They sat there, the formality between them shifting into something else. Something neither of them was quite ready to name. I'll need to present this to the community, Naomi said. This can't be my decision alone. Of course. I'd like to be there. When you present it. You want to come to a community meeting in Riverside. Is that so surprising? Marcus Huntington, Billionaire CEO, coming to a community meeting in a working-class neighborhood? Yes, that's surprising. Then I'll surprise you. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Naomi realized she'd never actually seen him smile before. It made him look younger, less guarded, almost vulnerable. Okay, she heard herself say. Thursday night. 7 p.m. I'll be there. As Naomi gathered her things to leave, Marcus stood. Naomi. She paused at the door. The sound of her name in his voice did something strange to her pulse. Thank you, he said simply, for not giving up. I'm fighting for them, not for you. I know. That's what makes it matter. Naomi drove back to Rising Voices headquarters in a daze. Lisa took one look at her face and dragged her into their tiny conference room. What happened? He listened. He actually listened. Lisa's eyes widened. Marcus Huntington, the same man who's made corporations weep. He went to Riverside, watched the center, and he came up with a compromise that might actually work. Naomi. Lisa's voice was careful. You know this could still be a manipulation, right? A long game. I know. But you don't think it is. I don't know what to think anymore. Naomi sank into a chair. Lisa, when he talks about his development plans, I can see the brilliance. The way his mind works, it's incredible. And when he talks about the community center, I can see that he's actually trying. Really trying to do the right thing. And I'm starting to see him as a person instead of just an opponent. Oh, girl. Lisa sat down across from her. You're catching feelings. I am not. You absolutely are. I've known you for 12 years, Naomi Clarke. I've watched you face down slumlords and corrupt politicians without blinking. But Marcus Huntington has you all twisted up. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Naomi thought about the way Marcus had looked standing at his window, admitting he'd forgotten things were real. The vulnerability in his voice when he'd asked her to call him by his first name. The smile that had briefly transformed his entire face. I don't know, she admitted. But I'm scared that you might be right. Do you want my advice? Do I have a choice?
No.
Lisa leaned forward. Marcus Huntington is powerful, brilliant, and from what you've told me, he's starting to show you glimpses of the man beneath the armor. But armor exists for a reason, Naomi. He built those walls to protect himself. And if you start breaking them down, you'd better be prepared for what comes out. What do you mean? I mean that wounded people can be the most dangerous. Because when they finally let someone in, they don't do anything halfway. It's all or nothing. And with someone like Marcus. Lisa shook her head. I'm just saying be careful. With your heart and with the community's future. Don't confuse the two. Naomi knew Lisa was right. But as Thursday approached, she found herself thinking less about the community meeting and more about seeing Marcus again. She was playing with fire. And part of her, the part she usually kept locked away, wanted to see how badly she could get burned. Thursday evening arrived cold and clear. Naomi had spent the entire day preparing for the community meeting, making sure everyone understood the proposal before Marcus arrived. She needed the community to make an informed decision, not one influenced by his presence or power. The Riverside Center's main hall was packed. Every chair was filled, and people lined the walls. Naomi recognized faces she'd known for years. Mr. Patterson, who'd been coming to the senior lunch program since it started. Jade Martinez, whose 3 kids were in the after-school program. Antoine Wilson, who'd gotten his GED at the center at age 45 and now ran the job training classes. These were her people. Her community. And she was about to ask them to trust a man who represented everything they'd learned to fear. Thank you all for coming, Naomi addressed the crowd. I know the past few weeks have been stressful. The uncertainty about the center's future has affected all of us. But tonight, I want to present you with a new option. She pulled up the architectural plans on the projector. Mr. Marcus Huntington has proposed incorporating the community center into his new development. This would give us 3 floors of dedicated space, triple what we have now, with sustainable funding from the building's commercial tenants. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some curious. Many skeptical. I know what you're thinking, Naomi continued. Why should we trust him? And that's a fair question. But I've spent the past 2 weeks in negotiations with Mr. Huntington, and I believe is genuine in wanting to find a solution that serves the community. Where is he? Someone called out. Why isn't he here explaining this himself? I'm right here. The crowd turned as Marcus entered from the back of the hall. He dressed down, relatively speaking, in dark jeans and a grey sweater instead of one of his signature suits. But there was no disguising who he was. Power followed him like a shadow. Naomi's breath caught as he walked down the center aisle. He looked nervous, she realized. Actually nervous. His hands were in his pockets, and he wasn't making eye contact with anyone. He reached the front and stood next to Naomi. She could feel the tension radiating off him. Thank you for letting me speak, Marcus began. His voice was steadier than his posture suggested. I know I am not welcome here. I know I represent everything that's gone wrong in this neighborhood. The gentrification, the displacement, the erasure of community in favor of profit. The crowd was silent, surprised by his directness. And they're right to see me that way, Marcus continued. Because for years, that's exactly what I've been. A man who saw neighborhoods as investment opportunities and people as obstacles to overcome. He paused, and Naomi could see him struggling with what to say next. But someone recently reminded me that I wasn't always that man. I grew up in foster care. I lived in my car as a teenager. I know what it's like to have nothing. To be invisible. To have people look through you instead of at you. A few people in the crowd shifted, their expressions softening slightly. I can't undo the harm I've caused over the years, Marcus said. And I can't promise that this development won't change your neighborhood. Change is happening whether I'm part of it or not. But what I can promise is that if you agree to work with me on this, the community center will be bigger, better funded, and more secure than it's ever been. And it will remain a community resource, not a commercial venture. Mr. Patterson stood up, his walker creaking. At 83, he was the oldest regular at the center. Son, why should we believe you? Marcus met his eyes. Because I'm giving you something I've never given anyone before, my word. And I'm putting it in writing. If I fail to deliver on any aspect of this proposal, the entire building reverts to community ownership. Legally. Irrevocably. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Even Naomi stared at him. That wasn't part of the proposal they discussed. Marcus, she started, but he shook his head. I'm serious. My lawyers will draw up the paperwork. If I don't follow through, the community gets a multi-million-dollar building for free. Why would you do that? Jade Martinez asked, standing with her youngest child on her hip. Marcus looked at Naomi briefly, then back at the crowd. Because someone taught me that there are things more important than winning. And because... He took a breath. Because when I watched this community center last week, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. I saw people taking care of each other. I saw hope. And I want to be part of building that instead of destroying it. The silence that followed was heavy with consideration. Then Antoine Wilson stood. I got my GED here 5 years ago, he said. Before that, I couldn't read past a 5th grade level. Couldn't get a decent job. Felt like a failure as a father. But this place gave me a chance. Gave me dignity. He looked directly at Marcus. If you're serious about preserving that, about honoring what this place means, then I'm willing to give you a chance. One by one, others stood. Not everyone. There were still plenty of skeptical faces in the crowd, but enough. Enough to show that the community was willing to trust, even if cautiously. After an hour of discussion, questions, and debate, a vote was called. The proposal passed with 73% approval. As the meeting broke up, Marcus found himself surrounded by people. Some wanted to shake his hand. Others wanted to make sure he understood the center's programs. Mr. Patterson pulled him aside and told him stories about the neighborhood's history. Jade's youngest daughter offered him a drawing she'd made during the meeting. A colorful house with people holding hands in front of it. Naomi watched from across the room, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. This wasn't the cold billionaire from the glass tower. This was someone different. Someone real. When the last person finally left, it was just the two of them in the empty hall. Marcus was still holding the little girl's drawing, looking at it like it was the most precious thing he'd ever received. That went better than I expected, he said quietly. You surprised me. The clause about community ownership if you fail to deliver, that wasn't part of our discussion. I know. I decided it needed to be. Why? Marcus finally looked at her. Because you asked me what that boy who lived in his car would think of who I'd become. I've been thinking about that question for 2 weeks. And I realized he'd be ashamed. Not of the success, but of how I achieved it. Of who I had to hurt along the way. Marcus. Let me finish. He stepped closer. I can't change my past. Can't undo the damage I've caused. But maybe I can do better going forward. Maybe I can become someone that boy would be proud of. Naomi felt tears prickling at her eyes. You already are. Coming here tonight, being vulnerable in front of all these people, that took courage. I was terrified. I know. I could tell. But you didn't rescue me. You let me stand there and face them on my own. Would you have wanted me to rescue you? Marcus smiled that transformative smile again. No. You knew exactly what I needed. You always seemed to know. They stood there in the quiet hall, the air between them charged with something neither was ready to name yet. Outside, the city hummed with life. But in this moment, they were isolated in their own small bubble of possibility. Naomi, Marcus started, then stopped. I should go. It's late. She wanted to ask him to stay. Wanted to keep talking, Keep discovering the man beneath the armor. But she just nodded. Thursday meetings are still on? She asked. Every Thursday. I've already blocked the time permanently. As he walked to the door, he paused. Naomi. Thank you. For seeing past who I had become to who I could be. After he left, Naomi sank into one of the chairs, her legs suddenly weak. Lisa's warning echoed in her mind. Wounded people can be the most dangerous. But as she looked at the drawing Jade's daughter had left behind, now on the table where Marcus had set it, she thought maybe wounded people could also be the bravest. Because it took tremendous courage to let someone see your scars. The next 6 months unfolded like a carefully orchestrated dance. Marcus threw himself into the Riverside project with an intensity that surprised even his closest associates. But it wasn't the ruthless intensity he usually brought to business. It was something else entirely, something that looked suspiciously like passion. He attended community meetings. Not just the big ones, but the small committee gatherings where details were hammered out. He learned the names of the regulars at the center. Sponsored the youth basketball team. Showed up to the senior lunch program and actually sat down to eat with Mr. Patterson and his friends. The media noticed. Billionaire's redemption arc, read one headline. Marcus Huntington's surprising turn toward humanity, declared another. But for Marcus, it wasn't about headlines. It was about the way Antoine's face lit up when Marcus attended his GED graduation ceremony. The thank you card from Jade's daughter, covered in glitter and misspelled words. The respect in Mr. Patterson's eyes when Marcus asked his advice on the building design. And it was about Thursday mornings with Naomi. Their meetings had evolved into something that couldn't quite be called business anymore. Yes, they discussed the project. But they also talked about books, argued about politics, shared stories from their childhoods. Marcus found himself telling her things he'd never told anyone. About the night his mother died, about the foster home where he'd been locked in a closet for 2 days, about the mentor who'd betrayed him. Naomi shared her own stories, growing up with a mother who worked 3 jobs, the year they'd been homeless and lived in a shelter, the teacher who'd believed in her when no one else did. We are not that different, you and I, Marcus said one Thursday morning, coffee growing cold between them. We are very different, Naomi countered. You responded to your trauma by building walls. I responded to mine by building bridges. Maybe. Or maybe we both built what we thought would keep us safe. And did it. Keep you safe. Marcus thought about his empty penthouse, his carefully curated life, the years he'd spent winning at everything except being human. No, he admitted. It kept me alone. Naomi reached across the table and took his hand. It was the first time they'd touched beyond professional handshakes. Marcus felt the contact like an electric shock. You're not alone anymore, she said softly. He turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together. No, I'm not. They sat like that for a long moment, neither speaking, both aware that they'd crossed an invisible line. This is complicated, Naomi finally said. Very. We are working together. There's a power imbalance. People will talk. They will. Lisa thinks I'm playing with fire. Lisa's probably right. Naomi laughed, and the sound made something in Marcus's chest crack open. So what do we do? I don't know. I've never done this before. Done what? Cared about someone more than I care about winning. Naomi's breath caught. Marcus. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But Naomi, you've changed my entire world. The way I see things. The way I see myself. I can't pretend that's not happening. I can't either, she admitted. But we need to be smart about this. The project has to come first. The community has to come first. Agreed. So we wait. We finish the project, prove that we can work together successfully, and then... He squeezed her hand. Then we see what happens. It was the rational choice. The mature choice. But as Naomi left his office that day, she felt like she was walking away from something precious. Lisa was waiting when she got back to rising voices. You're glowing. I am not. Girl, you look like someone who just got exactly what she wanted and is terrified about it. Naomi sank into her chair. We are waiting. Until the project is done. That's smart. I know. But you don't want to wait. No. Lisa stuttered her friend. You're in love with him. Naomi stopped. Was she? Could you fall in love with someone in 6 months? Especially someone who'd started as your adversary? But she thought about the way Marcus's face softened when he talked about the community. The vulnerability in his voice when he shared his past. The careful way he'd been dismantling his own armor, piece by piece, letting her see the man underneath. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I am. Does he know? I think so. And I think he feels the same way. Then why wait? Because this project is bigger than both of us. If we mess this up because we can't keep our feelings in check, hundreds of people suffer. I can't risk that. That's very noble. It's very terrifying. But they stuck to their agreement. The project moved forward. The old Riverside Center was carefully documented, its memories preserved in hundreds of photographs and oral histories. Families were relocated to temporary facilities that Marcus funded without complaint. And every Thursday, Marcus and Naomi met, talked, connected, and carefully didn't acknowledge the growing tension between them. 15 months after their first meeting, the new Riverside Community Center opened its doors. It was everything Marcus had promised and more: 3 floors of state-of-the-art facilities, a commercial kitchen for the food program, classrooms with actual heating and air conditioning, a gymnasium, a computer lab, offices for staff, and a rooftop garden where the seniors could tend vegetables. The opening ceremony was attended by everyone from the mayor to the local news stations. But the people who mattered most were there too: Mr. Patterson, Jade, and her kids, Antoine, and hundreds of community members who'd waited anxiously to see if Marcus would keep his word. He had. Every single promise, fulfilled. Every detail, perfect. As Naomi gave her speech thanking everyone who'd made it possible, she looked out at the crowd and saw Marcus standing in the back. He wasn't on the stage. Wasn't taking credit. He was just there. Supporting. Witnessing. Being part of the community he'd once almost destroyed. Their eyes met, and the look that passed between them said everything they'd been holding back for 15 months. After the ceremony, after the tours and the food and the celebration, after everyone had finally gone home, Naomi found Marcus on the rooftop garden. He was looking out over the neighborhood, the same way he used to look out over the city from his tower. But his expression was different now. Softer. More human. You did it, Naomi said, joining him. You actually did it. We did it. This was never just me, Naomi. You're the one who fought for this community, who believed it was worth saving. And you're the one who listened, who changed. Marcus, do you have any idea how rare that is? How many people are given the chance to see themselves clearly and actually choose to become better? He turned to face her fully. I couldn't have done it without you. You didn't just show me what was wrong with how I was living. You showed me what was possible if I had the courage to change. It wasn't courage. It was desperation. No. Naomi stepped closer. It was courage. Admitting you were wrong. Opening yourself up to connection. Letting this community in. That's some of the bravest work anyone can do. Marcus reached up, gently touching her face. Naomi, we agreed to wait until the project was done. The project is done. So it is. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Are you sure about this? About us? Because once we cross this line, I don't think I can go back. I don't want to go back. I'm sure. Are you? I've never been more sure of anything. When he kissed her, it felt like everything Naomi hadn't known she was waiting for. Soft and intense all at once. A promise and a question and an answer all wrapped together. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I love you," Marcus said. Not hesitant. Not questioning. Just true. "I love you too. This is going to complicate things. Everything worth having complicates things." Marcus laughed, the real laugh she'd learned to recognize, not the cold sound he used in business meetings. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't listening." "I'm listening now. To everything. You taught me how." They stood on that rooftop as the sun set over Riverside, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. A billionaire who'd learned he was more than his wealth. A community organizer who'd learned that even the most armored hearts could open. The next morning, Marcus did something that shocked the entire business world. He announced that 51% of Huntington Global Industries would be restructured into a community development fund, managed by an independent board that included Naomi Clarke. The fund would focus on sustainable development that prioritized community needs over maximum profit. Wall Street had a collective heart attack. His board demanded an explanation. His investors threatened lawsuits. Marcus didn't care. "For 20 years, I built an empire on fear and ruthlessness," he told the press conference. "I destroyed communities in the name of progress. I valued profit over people. And I was empty. Successful, powerful, and completely empty." He looked directly at the camera. "But someone taught me that there's a different way. That strength isn't about how many people fear you, it's about how many people you lift up. That true power comes from building, not destroying." In the audience, Naomi watched with tears in her eyes. "So yes," Marcus continued, "this will cost me billions. Yes, it will change my company fundamentally. And yes, some people will say I've lost my mind. But for the first time in 20 years, I'm proud of who I am. For the first time in my life, I'm building something that matters. And I have Naomi Clarke to thank for showing me how." The media exploded with questions, but Marcus just smiled, that real smile that transformed his face, and walked off the stage. He found Naomi backstage, and she threw her arms around him. "You're insane," she said into his shoulder. "Probably. The board is going to fight you on this. Let them. You could lose everything." Marcus pulled back to look at her. "I already lost everything that mattered once. When I built walls so high that I couldn't connect with anyone. When I became so afraid of being hurt that I forgot how to feel." He cupped her face in his hands. "But I'm not that man anymore. Because you did the unthinkable, Naomi. You looked at the most feared billionaire in America and saw not a monster, but a person. You refused to back down. You fought for your community, but you also fought for me. For the man you believed I could become. And look who you became," Naomi said, smiling through her tears. "Someone worthy of the courage that boy in the car had. Someone who builds instead of destroys. Someone who loves." "Someone who loves you," Marcus corrected. "And will spend the rest of his life trying to deserve you." 5 years later, the Riverside Community Center had become a model for development projects across the country. 15 similar centers had opened in other cities, all following the same principle. Communities weren't obstacles to profit, they were the whole point. Marcus and Naomi had married 3 years ago, in a ceremony held at the Riverside Center with Mr. Patterson officiating. He'd gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. Their daughter, Hope, was 18 months old, with Marcus's grey eyes and Naomi's brilliant smile. They split their time between a brownstone in Riverside and a much smaller apartment in Manhattan. Marcus still ran his company, but differently now. With ethics. With purpose. With heart. He'd reconnected with some of the people he'd hurt over the years, making amends where possible. Richard Calloway, his former mentor who'd betrayed him, had been the hardest. But Marcus had visited him in Florida, and they'd talked for hours. Not about money or business. About forgiveness. About how pain can make us cruel if we let it, but it can also make us compassionate if we choose differently. I spent 20 years punishing the world for what you did to me, Marcus had told him. But all I did was punish myself, and the innocent people around me. Richard had cried, the first time Marcus had ever seen him show real emotion. I am sorry for what I did, for teaching you that betrayal was just business. I forgive you, not for you, for me, so I can finally let it go. Now, Marcus stood on the same rooftop where he'd first kissed Naomi, watching Hope toddle around the garden while Naomi supervised. Mr. Patterson was there too, at 90 now, still attending the center every day. You did good, son, the old man said, settling into a chair beside Marcus. We did good. All of us together. You know what I think. Mr. Patterson mused. I think that young woman of yours saved your life. Marcus watched Naomi scoop up Hope, laughing as their daughter grabbed at her hair. His heart felt so full it might burst. No, he said softly. She didn't save me. She showed me how to save myself. There's a difference. What's that? One makes you dependent. The other makes you free. Antoine joined them, now running his own non-profit that had helped over 300 people get their JEDs. Jade came up with her teenagers, who'd started a tutoring program at the center. More people arrived, community members, friends, people whose lives had been touched by what happened here. As the rooftop filled with life and laughter, Marcus thought about the man he'd been 5 years ago. Cold. Alone. Afraid. Hidden behind walls so thick he couldn't even see out anymore. That man would have called this chaos. Would have seen all these people as intrusions, obligations, liabilities. But the man he'd become, the man Naomi had helped him discover he could be, saw family. Saw purpose. Saw home. Daddy. Hope called out, reaching for him. Marcus crossed the rooftop and swept his daughter into his arms, burying his face in her curls. Naomi wrapped her arms around both of them. Happy? She asked. Terrified, he admitted. Every day I wake up afraid I'll mess this up. That I'll fall back into old patterns. That I don't deserve this. Good. Good. It means you're human. It means you care. The day you stop being afraid of losing this is the day you should worry. Marcus kissed her forehead. How did I ever think I was fine without you? You were surviving. Now you're living. There's a difference. As the sun set over Riverside, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Marcus Huntington, once the most feared billionaire in America, felt something he'd never experienced before. Peace. Not the peace of having no problems. Not the peace of being untouchable. But the peace that comes from being known, fully and completely, and loved anyway. The peace of belonging somewhere. To someone. To a community. To himself. Naomi had done the unthinkable. She'd looked at a man the world feared and saw someone worth saving. She'd refused to let him hide behind his wealth and power. She'd demanded he be better, not for her, but for himself. And in teaching him to open his heart, she'd taught him to live. As Hope fell asleep against his shoulder and Naomi's hand found his, Marcus sent up a silent thank you to the universe. To the scared boy who'd somehow survived and kept hoping. To Richard Calloway, whose betrayal had taught him the lesson he'd needed to learn, even if it took 20 years. To Mr. Patterson and Antoine and Jade and all the others who'd given him a chance when he didn't deserve one. But most of all, to Naomi. The woman who'd done the unthinkable. Who'd loved him not despite his brokenness, but through it. Who'd shown him that walls might keep you safe, but only love could make you whole. The evening breeze carried laughter and conversation, the sounds of community, of connection, of life fully lived. And Marcus Huntington, no longer the arrogant billionaire, but simply a man who'd learned to love, held his family close and smiled. He'd won at business for 20 years. But this was what victory actually felt like. And it tasted like hope. Thank you so much, my beautiful family, for staying with me till the end of this powerful story. May we all remember that no matter how strong or wealthy we become, true greatness is found not in power, but in compassion, forgiveness, and love. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share, so more people can feel the message behind it. Until next time, may the Almighty pour His mercy upon your life, and may peace, love, and light never leave your home. This is Sammy Stories. Stay blessed, stay inspired, and see you in the next story. Red Heart.